Grading every NFL offseason. Today, we're going to be talking about the AFC East, and we're going to be starting off with the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, there's a new setup. We'll get to the old setup at the end just to show it off a little bit, talk about it. But we're going with the new setup today, and we're, again, going to start with the Buffalo Bills. No reason to not get straight into it. As always, I'm going to start by the coaching. They fire Sean McDermott, the head coach. They get rid of their defensive coordinator. Instead of getting rid of their offensive coordinator, they promote him. Joe Brady is now the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. They bring in guys under him. They bring in a lot of Broncos personnel under him. Let's just state the obvious here. I don't think this was the right move. I don't think this was the correct fix. I get the offense has been good, and you don't really want to lose that, but I also don't think the fix to the team was promoting the offensive guy. I don't really see how the defense gets any better by this move, and that was kind of their issue last year. If you look at the stats, the 2025 team stats that are directly under me, you can see yards allowed per game, they were 28th in the league, 32nd in rushing touchdowns allowed. I just don't know for sure how you're going to fix that. McDermott, while I don't know if was a great head coach, was a really good defensive mind. I felt like the defense personnel has fallen off. Of course, it's not listed here, but they also fired their GM. Kinda. They gave him a promotion. So somehow I felt like the personnel has been mishandled and they promote the guy. I just don't really like anything they did as far as executive down to coaching. I don't like any of those moves. So, stating the obvious, not off to a hot start. And then their big fix to this offense, which, as you can see, passing yards per game, they were 15th in the league last year, which was their worst offensive stat. In every other offensive stat, they were top 10. So, the one thing they really had to fix was the passing game. And it's because Josh Allen doesn't have much help, so they go out and get him a receiver. The issue is DJ Moore that good of a receiver in 2026? If you look at his 2025 numbers, they'd say no. He was healthy all year, which is a plus, but with being healthy all season, he underperformed massively. I can't help but in my brain to go back to the play, 2 years ago, where Caleb Williams is scrambling around. It's his rookie season. He's trying to find someone down the field. DJ Moore runs off onto the sideline, sits on the bench before the play's even over. That's the kind of stuff I think of with DJ Moore over the last 2 years. Now, does a new change of scenery help the guy? Maybe. But going into this season, older receiver on a brand new team, how many times does that tend to work out? Not very many. I can name only a few. Devontae Adams with the Raiders, and then even with the Jets, and then with the Rams. But that's a Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame level talent we're talking about in Devontae Adams. With guys like DJ Moore, how often does changing teams late in their career actually benefit them? That is a big question mark for me. I don't know if that was the right move. Even if they go off and have a good statistical season with him, how much does he add to winning? How much does he add to truly taking this offense to the next level? I really don't know. A lot of what made him so good was the run after catch stuff. And again, he's getting older. I don't know if that just magically gets better because he's on a new team and has a better attitude potentially. I've seen a lot of stuff so far. We're only in June 14th. So I've seen a lot of stuff about him not really getting the playbook very well yet either. There's a lot of question marks when it comes to DJ Moore. And I question the move in the moment as far as winning. Again, I thought statistically maybe they do well, but winning, I question the move. Is that a good use of resources with the money you're spending? And then I think the answer was no with the rest of the offseason. Take a look at what else they do. They go out and get Bradley Chubb, which I would argue was not a good move in itself. Let's see the money on that. Let's take a look. So, Bradley Chubb ended up getting a 3-year, $43.5 million deal. Don't love it. Older guy. Dang it. Come on. Where are we at? Okay. Bradley Chubb, another guy who's older, who has been underperforming as of late. I just don't know if that's the kind of moves that Buffalo should be making. They're getting these older guys hoping they can coach them up. They're getting these older guys, hoping they're putting them in a better position. Your defense isn't that good. It's not like you're plug and play here. Oh, we're going to have this good defense. We're going to plug this dude in and he's going to make it better. What about this Buffalo defense is significantly better about this Miami defense that he's coming from? Not much. And that sounds a little harsh because it is Miami and we're talking about Buffalo, but that's the fact of the matter is that they have not been a good defense all of last year. Towards the end of the year before that, they just haven't been that good. And again, Bradley Chubb, Alford, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's quit on his team and quit on the Eagles, and then he quit on the Texans. What are we doing? I just don't see the upside in this, honestly. I tend to try to see where a lot of these teams are trying to go for. Here, I just don't see it. I feel like they're shooting for upside that I just don't think exists with these players. I don't know if these guys are going to come in and change the stats that are under me. And therefore, I really don't like any of these moves. As far as the things that they've lost, they traded away Teron Johnson to the Raiders, which is fine. You need cap space, I guess. You got to pick for him, whatever. David Edwards, starting caliber lineman. You had to lose him because you're out of money. The rest, whatever, I guess. But the point is, you didn't lose much, but that kind of is what sucks, is you didn't lose much, but you didn't add anything, in my opinion, to really put you over the top. You re-signed guys like Dawson Knox, who I think is a very good piece to this team. Very good, unselfish team player. Great guy to have yours are tight end too. I thought Trent Sherfield showed promise, I guess, when he played. He had a game here and there where you vividly notice him on the field. Obviously, Connor McGovern is a really good center. Very good that they locked him up. But other than that, man, I just don't see a ton here. And therefore, I'm just kind of, I would say, indifferent about everything I've said before, but I'm actually a little low on it. I don't like the coaching stuff. I don't like the GM stuff. And I don't care for the additions that they had. This is a team that I picked to win the Super Bowl last year. And now I have to question, like, are they going to win their division? They didn't do it last year, but of course you would expect them to bounce back and do it this year with New England having to face a tougher schedule this year. I don't know if they do it. We can talk about their draft real quick, but they didn't have any first-round picks, so we're not talking about any high caliber players. They do get TJ Parker from Clemson. Let's see what else they ended up doing. Hopefully, I do think that I do like that they went defense heavy. That is a plus. But again, are these rookies round 2 or later, all of them, are these rookies going to come in and really set this defense apart and make it better? I don't think so. You have Josh Allen, who is a scrambling, running, heavy hit taking quarterback. I worry, how long is he going to have? I worry, is his body going to be able to hold up in the long term when his style of play? And I feel like they're kind of fumbling the bag. I felt like last year should have been the year they went all in, especially when Kansas City was struggling the way they were. The deadline should have been move after move after move. They chose not to make many. Now this year, I feel like they're just selling themselves short. I just don't like much of what the Bills have done in the last year and a half. I hate the coaching stuff. I'm going to have to give this a really low grade. I don't think it's quite an F because, again, DJ Moore statistically probably comes in and helps them. Regular season, it probably helps a lot. And, again, if you're comparing losses to additions, I do think the players they brought in on defense are better than guys they lost, but I don't know if it's putting them over the top. It's kind of like I talked about last video, how the Raiders I gave an A+ because for their situation, for them being the worst team in the league, I felt like they did a great job of taking the first step, even first 2 to 3 steps forward. I thought they put themselves in a really good position going into this year and to next year of building something really special and really giving themselves an opportunity to build off of it. This year with the Bills, it should be do as much as we can to possibly help Josh Allen win a Super Bowl. Especially, again, the Chiefs are going into the season banged up this year. You have a chance to jump out to an early lead and don't let them catch you. It just doesn't feel like they did any of that. And I get there's cap constraints. But again, that's when I go into the moves that they did make and say, I don't like where you spent your resources. That is where I don't like. And so I'm going to give this offseason grade for the Buffalo Bills a C minus. I just feel like when you have a guy like Josh Allen, you should be voiding contracts. You should be doing whatever you can to go all in. And I just didn't see it. Again, I get there's cap restraints. But at the end of the day, what the Saints did with Drew Brees, I feel like you have to do with Josh Allen. They just didn't do it. Gets a C minus. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins, who had a extremely busy offseason. Of course, we'll talk about the coaches like we always do. Mike McDaniel is gone, takes out the entire coaching staff over there. They bring in Jeff Hafley, who was the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator. They bring in Bobby Slowick. They actually don't. He was already there, and halfway through the year, Frank Smith got fired, who you see was a loss, and they promoted Bobby Slowick. So in a way, he's actually just staying there as the offensive coordinator. I put him as an addition, but honestly, that's not entirely true. He was already there last year. Towards the end of the year, they keep him in there as their offensive coordinator, I should say, and Sean Duggan comes in, who is coming over from Green Bay with Jeff Hafley. So the first thing they do is get rid of everybody. Tyreek Hill, gone. Waddle, which happened a little later, but Waddle, traded. Tua, traded. Bradley Chubb, traded. Minka Fitzpatrick, traded. I think I said traded a couple extra times. I meant cut or released or whatever the case for Tua and Bradley Chubb. But Minka Fitzpatrick, traded. They don't sign a lot of what they had left, which is fine. You're one of the worst teams in the NFL. Cool. Let them all walk. How much is losing Tyreek Hill really lose? I mean, how much is he even going to be able to play this year? Waddle is the one head scratcher to me, admittedly. Everyone else, I fully understood, fully got every move they made as far as people they were letting go, except Waddle. I felt like he could still possibly fit the timeline, but at the same time, maybe he doesn't fit the timeline. Maybe in 2 years he's not that good and you won't be able to get a first-round pick for him like you could right now. So maybe the move is to trade him. I don't hate the move. I want to make that clear. That's just the one head-scratcher to me, but I can very easily explain it and get behind it, in my opinion. So I don't even hate that move. It's just the one I liked the least out of all of them. But getting rid of Tyreek and Tua and Bradley and all Minka, I think all those were really good and what a rebuilding team should do. Look at the stats under me, 2025 team stats. They weren't good at anything. And if you're not good at anything, restart, rebuild. That's exactly what they're doing. One thing they did do, though, looking over at the additions, they bring in Packers quarterback Malik Willis. He was obviously the backup, but he's played a lot because Jordan Love at least misses a couple games every season. I think he missed 4 last year. Malik Willis came in and played amazing in those 4 games. Well, who had a front row seat of that? Jeff Hafley as the Packers defensive coordinator. He also had a front row in practice when Malik Willis was tearing them up, supposedly. And so he's like, you know what? That's our guy. I know he can play. I want to bring him in and be our quarterback for Miami. He does that. Now, my biggest issue here is I feel like they are setting him up for failure. You cannot have a receiving room with Malik Willis, who's very inexperienced. You cannot have a receiving core of Jalen. Sorry. You cannot have a receiving core of Jalen Tolbert and Tutu Atwell, who they've signed, and you already have Malik Washington. That cannot be your receiving core. You're setting your guy up to fail. You draft a couple of receivers, but the earliest one you do is Caleb Douglas from Texas Tech in round 3. I don't love that. You got to set your guy up a little more, especially as inexperienced as he is. I assume they're going to rely on the run game heavy. One defensive guy as a head coach, typically how it goes anyway. But you also have a running quarterback in Malik Willis. You have Devon Achane as your best player on your team. Of course, you're going to probably be run heavy anyway with just that dynamic. But still, I mean, obviously you got to pass the ball. I don't think this defense is going to take a drastic step forward. I do think, of course, that Jeff Hafley is going to provide a boost for them initially, but I don't know how drastic it can be. I mean, I think if you're a middle tier defense, then you're very happy with what Jeff Hafley brought, and then you can just add to the defense as you get your money back, as you'll start getting your money back as soon as next year and forward when these contracts are hitting off your books. So It's a really tough situation. And I only say that because we talked about the Raiders in the last video. If you hadn't seen it, go check it out. And I talked about in that video how I loved everything they did. They were rebuilding, but they were taking the first step into truly being a really good team and building something right, building it the correct way, in my opinion. Funny enough, my complaint there too was wide receiver. And I do think, like I said, they're building it the right way. Miami, however, I look at this and I don't know if they quite did it right. Now, let me be clear. The Malik Willis thing isn't that big of a deal. If you look at the money, he's not locked up long term. It's only a 3-year deal, and they can get out of it a year early. So it's not like they have all this money tied into him that they can't get out of. But though and maybe this is just great coach talk. Maybe I'm just completely buying what they're selling. But they are speaking of Malik like he's their guy. Like, we don't need to go out and look. We have our guy. And if that's true, you didn't set him up very well. And I would argue you don't have a fair look at if he is your guy. Because if he is your guy, I mean, like, it's unfair to say, like, oh, yeah, he didn't play well with Jalen Tolbert as his number one. Not a good guy, not a good quarterback. Like, that's not a fair look. Again, maybe I'm just buying into the coach speak. Maybe so clearly and obviously the plan going forward is for them to suck this year, tanking this year essentially, and then they're going to go draft Arch Manning or whoever else, one of the 500 quarterbacks in next year's draft. Maybe that's the take here, and maybe they're just doing the coach speak to perfection. That is very possible. But regardless, I think it's unfair to Malik, whether he's actually their guy or they're just pretending it. It is so unfair to him having to go in with this receiving core. Spent a lot of time talking about that when, again, they were planning on sucking anyway, I think, so it's not totally relevant anyway. But yeah, other than that, they bring in a lot of guys that I think they believe in their system can play up to their potential. None of them have stupid elite potential, but I think they believe that these guys are their guys, and they're setting a foundation. Not as well as like the Raiders did, but they are setting a foundation. Specifically on the defensive side of the ball, I'm assuming they think these guys are going to stay. I mean, they signed them all to 1-year deals, but I would think they still think they're going to stay like a little longer than 1 year. Again, maybe I'm just totally off. Maybe they don't care. Maybe this year is what it looks like on paper, because that's partially the problem. Is I'm looking at this on paper and going, oh, they're clearly tanking. But then I'm hearing what they're saying and going, no, they think they're going to, maybe let's just see through everything and look at what it is. 1-year contracts. Malik Willis is a contract they can easily get out of. They're rebuilding. They're tanking this year so they can go get an elite quarterback in an elite quarterback draft class. That's what it looks like. As far as the draft goes, outside of that, I already talked about it a little bit. They went back-to-back Texas Tech guys, second and third round. But I want to talk about the top 3 picks. Chris Johnson, I do worry about strictly because I don't know if he's ready day one to be the number 1 corner on a team, and he is probably going to be that in Miami. And where that makes me worry is how is he going to do if he's getting torn up all year one? Like mentally, how is that going to affect him the rest of his career? Is that going to stump his development? That's what's going to happen. And so I do worry about him because I think he's a little raw. So how is his mental going to be going forward when he has to guard the other team's number 1 and he's getting burnt? That is my first concern. Ken Proctor, he's a big guy who's a bit of a project. Again, a little raw. I think there were safer options here, but I do also understand if you're Miami saying we're not going to be good this year, so we're going to take the swing on the upside, because I do think he had one of, if not the highest upside of the entire draft for the offensive lineman. So maybe that's the take. Again, maybe they're just shooting for upside for all these picks. Now, one guy I do think I love the pick was Jacob Rodriguez. I love that pick. He was a Heisman finalist at Texas Tech, somehow sneaks all the way down to the second round. There was a part of me that thought the Patriots were going to take him because he just felt like a Patriot, and they were at the very end of the first round. I thought maybe he would sneak up to the first round and the Patriots take him. Obviously, that didn't happen. Really good pick for Miami, in my opinion. At the bare minimum, especially as a second rounder, I don't think he plays below a second round talent. I think they got a guy that's at least going to play like a second rounder, and I think has the potential to I understand his talent level may not look like he's some elite player, but he's just one of those dudes that always knows what the ball is, just has good instincts, and I think you will see that in Miami very early on, as early as this year. I think also it's fun to mention they have a Texas Tech linebacking core now. They still have Jordan Brooks, who got drafted by Seattle. He went to Texas Tech years ago, and now they have Jacob Rodriguez. They also re-signed Willie Gay. Not Tech guy. Just thought I'd mention it because I'm talking about the linebackers. Anyway, so as far as Miami goes, it's hard to really grade them. Let's just say we're seeing through their coach speak. Let's just say their goal is to not be good next year. To show some promise, you want by the end of the year, maybe you're taking a couple steps forward, but you're not going to be good. You know it. That is what we're going to go into this season, assuming, because that's what it looks like on paper. And so I'm going to say they did an all right job at that, but that's hard to grade in my book. So I'm just going to give them a C to a C plus, strictly because how do I grade a team that I think's trying to tank? It's hard to do, right? So I'm going to give them a C and just kind of move on, because I could sit here and debate with myself all day whether, oh, it's a good tank, so it's a B. Like, that's just too much. I'll give them a C and move on. All right, next we have the New England Patriots. The entire reason I put this division in this week on my schedule, and later this week we're going to be talking about the NFC East, is because we almost knew for certain that the Eagles were going to trade A.J. Brown to the New England Patriots. We assumed sometime early June, but we weren't for sure. So I just pushed this back as far as possible, made it the last AFC team I talked about for the A.J. Brown trade. There's not much to talk about coaching-wise because they, of course, kept all their coaches because they just went to the Super Bowl. So, kept all their coaches. Good call. Not going to sit here and argue that they shouldn't have done that. As far as additions go, they knew their need was receiver, and they just acted this offseason as if they knew they were going to have A.J. Brown on their roster, which is why I tried to hold off on this, because if they didn't, then that would have been horrible. The way they handled this offseason wouldn't have been good, but I waited on it because I thought A.J. Brown was coming. Sure enough, hey, yo, here's A.J. Brown. So they addressed the offensive line, which was the other really big issue for the New England Patriots, especially go rewatch that Super Bowl. I don't think Drake May played great, and I am a big Drake May guy. I think Drake May's awesome. Probably overhated because of how he played in the Super Bowl, but I can admit and say he didn't play great, but a lot of that was because of the offensive line, and he felt pressure over and over and over again. So we'll address the offensive line. They did it with Elijah Vera Tucker from the Jets, a versatile lineman. They also draft Caleb Lomu from Alabama. That is not right. He is not from Alabama. Yeah, he's from Utah. My bad. Anyway, I guess I copied it from freaking Caleb Proctor. Anyway, so they get Caleb Lomu. What the heck? Anyway, got myself frazzled. Yes, Caleb Lomu from Utah, which glad I got that. Good offensive lineman. I'm actually surprised he fell as far as he went. I don't think he has the floor of some of the other offensive linemen in this draft, but I also don't think he had the ceiling. I do think he will be a solid player in this league. You also really hope your number was a 3 pick from last year. Campbell was able to turn the corner. I know he has short arms, and that was made a big deal in the Super Bowl and a little bit before that. Hopefully, you just hope he can turn the corner or move into guard where it matters a little less. Maybe that's why they draft a tackle here, so they can move him. Who knows, but you're hoping he turns a corner. You get Elijah Vera Tucker. You get Lomu. You just hoping 3 new guys on this offensive line. No, not 3. I named 2 with hopefully again Campbell turning a corner. You also get James Hudson, a tackle from the Giants. I think that's more of a depth signing and what do you call it? Break in case of an emergency type signing. I don't think he's going to come in and start day one. And I just think, again, he's just a depth signing. Defensively, they bring. Oh, I also forgot to mention, of course, as well as with AJ Brown, who they traded for a first round pick, they bring in Romeo Dobbs. I think Romeo Dobbs is a very good number 2 behind AJ Brown. Like that, AJ Brown, Romeo Dobbs. You got Kayshon Boutte still. I do like that. I think that's a solid receiving core upgrade from what they had last year. I feel like I remember last week or the week before I saw Diggs post something like him on the Patriots. Kind of felt to me as if I was him calling for them to bring him back. So maybe you still have Diggs and Dobbs is like a third receiver, and you have Diggs and AJ Brown. Like that would be, I think, a really good receiving core at that point. Um, but of course, that's not what we're talking about because that's not what happened so far. Kevin Byard obviously isn't the player he used to be, but I do think is still a very efficient. Feels like a stretch actually. He's a very veteran savvy player that is good to have in your secondary. Which yeah, that's pretty much all there is to talk about with this offseason. Their draft wasn't too overly noticeable, other than of course the offensive lineman in the first round. They lose some depth, but no one I'm too terribly worried about them losing. And they bring in guys that are solid, nothing great, of course, other than AJ Brown. They keep their coaching staff. There's just not a lot to talk about here. I feel like they're a team that should have went all in, and maybe that's what you call AJ Brown is all in. I don't think so, especially with how easy their schedule was last year. And a lot of the breaks that they caught even in the playoffs, because maybe you'd make the argument, well, they still made the Super Bowl, didn't they? I mean, yeah, I guess, but like they they faced a Bo Nix team in the playoffs that, or a Bo Nix less team in the playoffs facing Jarrett Stidham, and they still barely won that game. Drake May is, again, as a guy who really likes Drake May, he played horrible down the stretch, and so that is something to be concerned about. I do think he plays better. I do think this team is better, but I do think they probably end up losing more games due to the harder schedule. Um, let's try to move on. I'm realizing I've been filming for 27 minutes, so we got to get a move on to this last team. So as far as this grade goes, I would like to have seen them do more, but what they did do, I do think is an upgrade. So we'll just give them a B minus. I wanted more from this Patriots unit. It doesn't mean what they did was bad. Just wanted a little more. All right, we're back on the Google Sheets for the last team because I just wanted to bring up that I have this Google Sheets. If you want it, the link will be in the description. It has actually, I can show you a little bit. It has every team on here. I have the NFL all on here. I was one. Thought, that's kind of unorganized and not very pretty. So I went through and made every team look pretty. And so we have every team in the NFL to talk about. It just has all the offseason moves, what they signed for, losses, drafted, their 2025 stats, has all the information you would want and need. You can obviously Google this very easily. It's not hard to find. I'm just psycho and like to see everything all in one space, so I just put it all in one space, and here it is. If you would like to use it, again, link will be in the description. I don't know what you'd use it for, but if you want to, there it is. So talk about the coaches. Obviously, they bring in 2 brand new offensive and defense coordinators. Brian Duker, who is the Dolphins defensive passing game coordinator, which don't love that. And then Frank Reich, long-term NFL coach. He coached for the Colts. He was the head coach there. Obviously, he won a Super Bowl in Philly, being the offensive coordinator. And he was at Stanford as the interim head coach last year. Very curious. There's times where it feels like the league has kind of passed him by. So I'm very curious to see what this offense looks like this year. Aaron Glenn's there as the defense, or sorry, not as defense coordinator, as a head coach. I very vividly remember saying when Aaron Glenn got hired, like, that doesn't feel like a good hire. Not a very big fan of him. I didn't feel like he ever made the defense in Detroit elite. They were good at times, but never elite. And so I didn't love the hire. But I gotta admit, there are times where I look at him and I'm like, man, why can't he do what Dan Campbell did? He doesn't really seem necessarily like a defensive mastermind, but rather a guy that's going to fire up the team, and maybe that's exactly what he is. And we'll talk about this offseason and why I believe that might be the case. So they trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick. They get Joseph Asai from the Bengals. Mario Davis from the Saints. Very good linebacker. Old, but very good linebacker. I'm not going to go through every one of them individually, of course, but They got a lot of signings that I thought like, okay, like that's good culture. Like that's a good culture setter. Minka and Demario, like specifically. There's a good culture setters. You get Onyemata from the Falcons, good defensive lineman. Like I said, Joseph Asai. You're bringing in these guys. And I was like, okay, like I don't know how many games you're gonna win, but like I do like that, like defensive like culture setters from the defensive head coach and Aaron Glenn. You bring in Geno Smith, who's clearly not the greatest, but he can come in and set this culture on this young offense. I didn't even mention him earlier, but Devondre Sweat from the Titans, I really like him. I couldn't believe the Titans let him go. So that's a young guy to put on your D line. And then you draft edge rusher from Texas Tech, David Bailey, who I don't think should have been the second pick overall, but I do think he was the safest pick. And I remember predicting it on the mock draft saying, like, it just feels like the Jets. They're not shooting for upside. They're trying to hit a safe pick they know is going to turn out and be good. And that's what David Bailey feels like to me. He feels like a guy that can come in day one and kind of have like a season like I'm blanking on his name. Gosh dang it. James Pierce, Falcons edge rusher last year. He feels like he can come in and have like a DPOY type season like he did last year. My issue with David Bailey is I don't see him getting much better. I think he kind of has that cap out. But I do think that this is a possibility we see him come in and be very good day one. I do think he has a high floor, low ceiling, but high floor. So I really feel like they came in and they really set a culture on this defense. When you're talking about the guys they're getting rid of on a team that won like 2 games, I really don't care. Justin Fields is gone. Who cares? I like Elijah Vera Tucker. Obviously, we talked about him with the Patriots. That one kind of sucks. But other than that, I just really don't care about their losses when they lost all the games that they did last year. I like bringing in the guys that they did. I like keeping your guys happy in the Brees Hall and re-signing him and giving him the contract that he deserved. You get Kenyon Sadiq, which I don't love. Let me be clear. I don't know if I love Kenyon Sadiq. I'm lower on him than a lot of people. But I do like in the first pick overall, you go get a guy you feel very comfortable with, and then not first pick overall, but your first pick in the draft, second overall. And then in your second first round pick, you go get the athletic freak. You take the chance on him. And then, of course, you follow that up with another first round pick and getting Omar Cooper Jr., the wide receiver out of Indiana. I do think they played their draft cards well enough. I don't know if I would say they did super good, but I would rather a different edge rusher in the draft. I'd rather going somebody that's not as safe as Bailey with higher upside, but I get it when you're just trying to stabilize the franchise. And that's how I'm looking at this. Similarly, how we ended up looking at Miami. I'm not looking at what they're saying, I'm looking at what they're doing, and I'm trying to determine what I think they're doing. I think the Jets here are just trying to stabilize the franchise. It feels like Aaron Glenn is going out here saying, I can do what we did in Detroit. In Detroit, if you remember, they started off horrible with Dan Campbell. They started off horrible with him. Then, year two, they start off horrible again. But the difference is that year, about halfway through the year, they went on an insane winning streak. They ended up winning like 8 games, 9 games, were only 1 game out of the playoffs. In that game, they still play hard and they beat the Packers anyway, keeping them out of the playoffs. And that just led into what we've seen from the Detroit Lions since, which is very good football. It feels like that's what they're trying to do here in New York. I don't know if they successfully did it, but that's what it feels like. It feels like they're trying to get something that's going to end up snowballing into success. I don't quite know if they got it. I don't know if it landed the way they wanted it to, but I do see the vision. I think I understand what they're trying to do. And if that is what they're trying to do, I actually think this offseason grade should be a little higher than what most people are probably going to say. I've never seen anybody else do a video like this. I actually don't know what other people are trying to say about it. But in my opinion, I see the vision. They're trying to stabilize this franchise. I think they expect by the end of the year to be winning a decent amount of games. And maybe decent isn't the right answer, but maybe it's, double what they did at the beginning half of the season. Maybe they win 2 games at the beginning and they win 4 at the end. Maybe that's a positive for them. But I do think that's what they're going for. With that said, I can't give it a stupid high grade, but I do think I can give it higher than I gave the Dolphins. this is going to sound crazy. I am trying to grade everybody off of the direction I think they're taking the franchise. So the Dolphins, who are tanking, got a B minus. And I think I'm going to give the Jets a B. It makes sense in my head. I know it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but I'm grading off of the direction I think they're trying to go. Also, a little bit where I think they should go, because a lot of the Bills at the beginning of the video, I felt like they should be going all in, and they chose not to. And that was a mistake. The Dolphins, I agree they should be rebuilding, and they went that direction, so I'm grading them on a rebuilding curve. This is the same way. It's time for them to build foundation and core, and I believe they're doing that. I think they're doing it solid, not great, not a Raiders A, but I give the Jets a B because I do think they're taking a proper step forward and building a core and a culture in New York that can eventually lead to winning. So I give them a B. So that's a video for the AFC East, the offseason grades. Again, not next week, or later this week, we'll be doing the NFC East. So make sure to subscribe if you want to see that. Again, if you enjoyed the video, like it, subscribe, do all of the YouTube things. Do you agree with my grades? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.